Number 2, drink water. Don't drink and drive.
Game over!
Take it light. Okay.
Now you're more fluent.
He got 3!
Up, Bears.
So this is really good right here. Absolutely. Let's do it.
Good evening, Toronto Maple Leaf fans. Welcome back to another episode of Leafs Unfiltered. My name is Josh. I am here solo, as you can tell. Co-pilot Caroline is not available tonight, unfortunately, but we will pull through and got a pretty good show lined up for you today. So for anyone tuning in, as we always allow, if you want to write a comment in to join the live here with myself, either ask a question, if you've got any comment, doesn't even have to be Leaf related. Any NHL topic or question is definitely available to you, and that's permitted here. So definitely let us know if you want to jump on here, post a comment. We can send you the link to the live studio here, and you can jump on here and we can chat about whatever you want. So let's tee up what we're going to talk about for tonight. Little bit of a light week in terms of noteworthy, I guess, stories around Leaf Nation. Not really any signings to speak of, not really much going on. Still obviously, I guess a little bit less than a month away from training camp. So not too much time for Brad Treliving in the Leafs front office to get moving on some either additions, a signing, any kind of PTO thing that they're looking at for training camp. So there is still time for it, but it is getting down to that, last 3 weeks or so. So hopefully we get some activity soon, and we will get into that. Obviously, Elliot Friedman on his 32 Thoughts podcast article on Sportsnet did make a mention of something Leaf related. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But other things we'll look at today, couple trades that we saw. We saw Penguins Winnipeg Jet trade. We're talking about that. Askarov, goaltending prospect, highly regarded goaltending prospect, moving on from Nashville, headed to San Jose. So I'll give a little bit of thoughts on those two transactions. And for the most part, we're just kind of look around things that have happened in the Leaf land over the past week. But let's get into it. I guess we'll start off with some Leaf notes. So the Elliot Friedman, sort of not really Elliot Friedman bomb dropped or anything, but of course, anytime Maple Leafs are mentioned in any Elliot Friedman tweet or 32 Thoughts podcast, it does kind of get people talking. And we definitely saw, that kind of heat up on Twitter and all socials, people speculating on what could be coming this way. So if you didn't see it, let me give you what Elliot Friedman posted. He basically said the Leafs are kicking tires on a left winger. This was his, I think it was his 31st thought on his 32 Thoughts article. So obviously a little bit further down there. So not sure if that means there's really not anything too exciting that he was referencing. But I guess in terms of what that could mean or who that could mean, when you talk about left wingers available in unrestricted free agency right now, it's not a very long list. You're talking about Max Pacioretty, whose name has been out there quite a bit. Haven't really heard much in terms of people making connections with Pacioretty and the Maple Leafs, but some other teams have been rumored to be considering bringing in Pacioretty, whether it's signing him to a deal or just a PTO, invite to training camp. Beyond Pacioretty, you've got options like Mike Hoffman, James Van Riemsdyk. Caroline and I believe last week we were talking about what would be the interest level on reuniting with James Van Riemsdyk. So could his name be one of the ones that was referenced by Elliot Friedman? Other options out there, there's Alexander Barbanov, there's Nick Cousins, there's Tyler Johnson. not so much on the left wing side of the equation. So, really you can kind of count on one hand who we're talking about in terms of who the Leafs might be kicking tires on, according to Friedman. But then I guess there's also the possibility that it might not be one of these UFAs. Maybe Elliot Friedman is hearing that there's a potential trade that the Leafs are looking at right now. Because then the other thing that has been talked about quite a bit over the last 48 hours by folks like Chris Johnston, he had a comment on it on Overdrive or First Up regarding current RFA Nick Robertson, who a lot of Leaf fans adore. They are dumbfounded to the reason why he's not already signed to a contract and why he's not already on the Leafs first line. So there's a lot of Nicky Robertson love out there. I think if you're on socials, you definitely see that there's that huge divide. You got half the Leaf fan base keeps waiting for Nick Robertson to be given that opportunity. And once he gets that opportunity, he will pot 40, 50 goals. You have that on one side of the extreme. And then on the other, you've got folks who are like, he's got enough of an opportunity and he really hasn't shown that much in terms of exciting contributions, ability to impact, move the needle. But I mean, it's a weird one because you look at he's obviously asked for a trade, and he did this after Craig Berube was hired. So I think he probably initiated it prior to the Berube hiring, but he hasn't backed off of that. So I think a lot of folks were assuming that, well, he wanted to get away from Sheldon Keefe because he didn't think Sheldon Keefe was going to give him the opportunity. But then when Sheldon Keefe was let go, that should have cleared up things for Nick Robertson in terms of his appetite to remain a member of the organization. Clearly not. And I think Chris Johnson said pretty much exactly that. I'm paraphrasing here, but insinuated that nothing has changed on the Nick Robertson front, that he's still hoping for a change of scenery. Which, when you start looking at the Maple Leafs depth chart, we know forward depth is not a huge issue, but something that has to be addressed. They need to get more depth, especially the bottom six group needs to be upgraded. So you look at Nick Robertson. I mean, I believe he had 14 goals last year. Looking at a left wing depth chart going into training camp of essentially Matthew Nyes, Bobby McMahon, and then who the hell knows who else behind them, Nick Robertson probably should be viewing the Maple Leafs as good of an opportunity to make an impact, to get the ice time that he feels was not given to him over the past, couple years. So it's a little bit weird for me. I mean, the Leafs did qualify him. So I believe that would still be available to him to sign, or he obviously could negotiate a deal. And I haven't heard the Leafs are unwilling to entertain that possibility. But it just feels like at this point, based on what some of these beat writers and reporters were saying, that he hasn't considered wanting to be a Maple Leaf again. So I don't know. I just don't know what the trade market is for Nick Robertson. I don't think there's going to be, or has been, teams knocking down the Toronto Maple Leaf door to acquire the player. It probably wouldn't take much more than a third, maybe a fourth round pick. And as long as you're willing to sign him to a contract, he's yours. So that tells me not much of a market for him. So I think Nick Robertson could be looking at not having a team heading into training camp if he's already decided the Maple Leafs are not for him. So curious to see how that plays out. It's obviously interesting to see if maybe he could get packaged into a deal. Would there be a player, if you could get a team to take Calle Yarncroke, a David Camp, please? Is there a team who would take one of them? I would love that. If you add Nick Robertson into it, plus a draft pick, a prospect, a little bit deeper in your player, your prospect pool, not obviously a Cowan Minton type, but or Danford, Could that be enticing to a team? That would be great. But yeah, we'll have to see how that plays out, because right now it feels like they're at a standstill. Other news, our boy Yanni Hakanpää, still no clue what's happening there. And I don't think anybody else really does. I think also Chris Johnston chimed in on what's happening there. He feels that at this point can't be viewed as encouraging for Hakanpää's availability come training camp, that he believes that it has to be a concern that the Maple Leaf doctors have with the knee injury, with his ability to resume playing at even a decent level. So I think at this point, it's probably a matter of Hakanpää's camp trying to convince the Maple Leafs to at least either give him the contract that was reported on July 1st or whenever it was, or bring him on a PTO. But it does feel like the Leafs are not there in terms of their confidence in where he's at in terms of, I guess, his rehabilitation or recovery from off-season surgery. So that's also one more interesting story to follow, right? I mean, as I said, we're under a month out from training camp. Nick Robertson, Hakanpää, are they a part of the team? Are they not? Are the Leafs pursuing a replacement for either of them, if they're already presuming that they won't be a part of the team? Or are they happy with the group? I mean, you look at the forward group right now. If Nick Robertson isn't a part of it, you're going to have guys like, obviously, Easton Cowan, Fraser Minton, Nikita Grebyankin, Jacob Quillen would be kind of the young forward prospects that I would say could push for a job. And then some like veterans like Alex Steeves, Alex Nylander, assuming they sign him to PTO. These would be guys that would probably be pushing for that 12th forward spot or higher. I think Cowan probably, after his performance in training camp, I would think he would prove worthy of being in the top 9 for this Maple Leaf team. But there's obviously, elements at play that could prevent that from being the path that the Maple Leafs take, right? If they feel that, well, we can't get rid of Calle Järnkrok or David Kampf because no one wants to absorb that money, then yeah, it might not be a matter of, Easton Cowan has to, or it might not be a matter of the best 12 forwards make the team, because I truly believe Easton Cowan, if you put him in a training camp today with guys like Calle Järnkrok, David Kampf, Holmberg, I can't see Cowan not outplaying them, right? For me, I just don't see how that would occur. And maybe I'm just too down or too low on what Järnkrok and Kampf or Holmberg could provide. And I get it. There are elements of them being veteran players, at least Kampf and Järnkrok, decent contributors on the PK, but far from great. Like our PK last year wasn't exactly exceptional, especially in the playoffs against the Bruins. So, and Kampf, you always keep hearing, well, he's a face-off guy, really good face-off guy. Yeah, he was 51% last year. Pretty sure you could find someone on whether it's an ELC because they're a prospect or someone from the Marlies who could get you 51% face-off, or on a PTO, like signing someone on who's a UFA right now. So I'm not sure what element of David Kampf excites some fans. I know it does, but for me, I'd rather see Cowan or Minton in there right now. Or even Alex Steeves. I think there's more intangibles there. And Alex Nylander, Nikita Grebyankin, Jacob Quillen, all these guys would be under $1 million in terms of their cap hit. And to me, I just don't think you're really losing much in terms of that impact or contribution going from Kampf to one of those guys. So those are some of the things that I still see as potential moves. I think Treliving is still cooking something up. Maybe it won't be the big Mitch Marner trade, as I've been talking about pretty much the entire offseason, that I still think is a possibility, a definite possibility, but obviously coming down in terms of the probability of it as we get closer to training camp. And I think at that point, I have a very good segue here that we're going to hit right now. So, it's August 28th, for those of you who don't know, and the summer is pretty much over. I mean, I think the official summer ending is whatever, second week in September. I don't even know the date. I'm not going to pretend to know the actual official dates of when the seasons change, but you could say once August is behind us, yeah, for most people, they would say the summer is over. So when I look at my summer, I would say for the most part, it's been a good summer. Maybe not the most exciting summer, but, I feel like I didn't leave that much on the table. Nothing too crazy, but it was a good summer, productive, fun activities. So overall, I'd say it was a good summer. But I'm not sure there are too many people out there who had as good of a summer as Mitch Marner. Just had to show that because put that together for my Leafs Talk TikTok account. And yeah, like it's been one clip after the other of Mitch Marner just living it up. He's having a good time. He's at the Minnesota, I guess, Street Festival or whatever they call that with old friend Justin Hall. He is having a great summer. Haven't seen many clips of him actually putting in any sort of off-season training regimen, but I imagine in between all these many shots of him at the cottage on the jet ski with Justin Hall, I'm sure he's found time to, train and prepare for what many Leaf fans assume will be a career year because he's in a contract year. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. But, and look, I get it. I'm not one of those people who are like, oh, another Instagram photo of Mitch Marner having fun. He can't do that. He's got to be lifting weights every time he posts a photo. Like, clearly, I don't believe that. But, at least you saw with John Tavares, Austin Matthews, they did not sure if you did see it, but they took a trip to Muskoka with Easton Cowan, Fraser Minton, little bit of, a short training camp, helping the young guys out maybe. And, obviously Matthews being the new captain, kind of good to see him, kind of taking those guys under his wing. So that was pretty cool. And I'm sure if you were on Twitter today, you definitely saw this guy here. This guy right over here. Hold on. Let me make that 1 second. Okay. Yeah. So I think this was in Toronto or the general area. Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid hit the ice together. Pretty cool, right? Like, obviously, you've got, Edmonton Oiler fan just being like, oh, yeah, here come all the Leaf fans saying, oh, for sure, Austin Matthews is recruiting Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid's coming home in 2 years. And, yeah, there probably are a lot of Leaf fans who think that because, end of the summer here, Connor McDavid decides that he wants to get on the ice with Austin Matthews. Are they trying to ramp up their chemistry a little bit, preparing for what's to come in 2 years? I don't know. But I kind of, I definitely got a chuckle. It's kind of entertaining seeing this photo. There was also, I think, if credit to Bar Down, by the way, they had a little video of Matthews and McDavid on the ice together, and then this clip of them in the dressing room. So yeah, go and check that out. There's a little clip of Austin Matthews, just, little soft pass, beautiful tape to tape pass to Connor McDavid. And I believe he scores on whatever goalie this guy is. It kind of looks familiar. I'm not sure if it's a known goalie or just kind of some guy they yanked onto the ice to allow him to just go bar down on a few times. I don't know. But yeah, it's just always funny to see, anytime something like this comes up where it's like, oh, like maybe there is something to it, that maybe Connor McDavid will consider coming back home. And then you get like a photo and a on ice clip of the two of them together, and Twitter just goes off. It went off, just throwing the grenade in there. Oiler fans rattled today. Tough to see. I'm not going to lie. I think for me, and just kind of quick on the Connor McDavid coming home, I don't believe it will happen. I don't. But I do think there's a decent chance it could if, okay? Here's a caveat. If, and I might have said this on the previous show, but if Edmonton, they came off, obviously, cup final appearance, losing in game 7, battled back from down 3-0. Great story. Right now, Leon Draisaitl is a pending UFA, same kind of thing as Mitch Marner next year, right? And John Tavares. There was a lot of talk early in the summer that the Oilers in Draisaitl were this close to getting a contract done. It's August 28th. There's no contract done. Not hearing it's imminent either. I mean, doesn't necessarily mean anything. We might just not be hearing from those who are connected. But, whether it was the Mark Spectors, whoever else, Ryan Rishaug, I recall June, July, I guess more July because Edmonton's season didn't end till late June, I guess. But there was a lot of people talking about how this Draisaitl extension was around the corner and it was a done deal. Now it feels like there's a little bit of uncertainty. So, I mean, kind of like the Jeremy Swayman situation with the Bruins, right? No one thought that Swayman wouldn't be signed yet. Now it's oh, okay, shit. He's asking for 10 mil. I'm not sure if the Bruins are going to go to that high of a number. So, yeah, it might not be a done deal with Leon Draisaitl. And this, I'll admit, totally pulling out my you-know-what. But let's just say, season goes on, McDavid, Draisaitl do their thing. Edmonton, let's say they finish whatever, first, second in the conference. Another great regular season. And they stumble in the playoffs, right? It's not crazy to fathom that possibility. But they stumble in the playoffs. They lose in round 2, or even lose in the conference final. If they lose badly in the conference final, like they did to, I guess it was Colorado 3 years ago when Colorado won the cup that year. Was that 3 years ago? I think so. So they lost to Colorado. So let's say they even get to the conference finals and they lose. And Draisaitl ain't signed yet. Do we really think that Draisaitl at that point will sign long-term with Edmonton? I suspect that at that point, Leon Draisaitl would probably be a little bit less bullish, encourage, optimistic, whatever word you want to throw in there, about the Edmonton Oilers' future and potential to win a cup. You just lost Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway, which, depending on your perspective, especially on Broberg, not really two guys who were critical to Edmonton's trip to the final. I'd say Holloway was obviously a good supporting player for them. Maybe not overly productive, but yeah, a good young player. Him and Broberg, you could argue. They got Matthew Savoie too now. But 2 of their top 3 prospects, I think, now gone. So you lose in, let's go with the round 2 scenario, because that actually helps what I'm saying a lot better. If they lose in round 2, Draisaitl spends the summer, not even the summer, and up until July 1st, I guess, before he becomes an unrestricted free agent. He starts saying, okay, well, what's Edmonton going to do? Stan Bowman, tell me how you're going to make this team turn it around. We went to the cup final, or we went to a conference final, then we lost in round 2. Then we went to a cup final, and then now we lost in round 2 again. Just go with me. Is he going to look at the future of the Edmonton Oilers? Because right now they are the oldest team in the league. Okay, we can't overlook that. And that was even before they lost Broberg and Holloway. So this is a very old team. Okay, not getting any better, not getting any younger. Prospect pool is trash, especially now. So how would Draisaitl view the future of the Edmonton Oilers? And would he find it appealing to sign an 8-year deal to play and live in Edmonton for the next 8 years if Edmonton doesn't really present him with any better of a chance to win? Like, I get it. If Edmonton goes back to the Cup Finals, or if they win the Cup Finals even, sure, everything I'm saying is for naught. But I'm talking about the very realistic possibility of Edmonton losing to, I don't know, Vancouver, a Vegas, a Colorado, a Dallas, a Nashville. Like, there's some good teams in the West, right? Like, it's not a certainty that Edmonton even gets back to the conference final. So what would Draisaitl do then? I would almost guarantee if the Oilers lose in round 1 or round 2, which I know for Oiler fans, like, well, that's not happening. We just went to the Cup final. Cool. But your D is bad. It's worse than what it was when it was already bad. Broberg, Ceci, replaced by Ty Emberson. And who knows? Like, it's not good. It's going to be a problem. Goaltending. Yeah, if you get to Stuart Skinner, who played in like the last 2 rounds of the playoffs, you're probably okay. But that might be asking for a lot, presuming a lot. So just saying, if we don't see a Draisaitl extension by training camp, I would think, as a lot of players do, yeah, if we don't get a deal before opening night, don't talk to me until the end of the season. I want to focus, you know? And then it extends, and that discussion doesn't happen again until after the postseason. And if Edmonton has an earlier playoff exit, I could definitely see a path for McDavid coming home. That was a long story made long for you. So those were kind of, I guess, a wrap on, I guess, the Leaf-related news, what's happening there. But that's kind of where I think things sit. I do hope that Treliving has a move up his sleeve. As I said, the forward depth worries me quite a bit. It's definitely not made any better after losing Bertuzzi. So for me at this point, I think there's got to be a play for whether it's adding someone on a PTO or making a move, making a trade. I think the Leafs finally have some depth on D, where maybe that's a position where whether you look at moving a Timothy Liljegren, because you feel either Dakota Mermis, Philip Myers, Nicholas Mantonen, Cade Weber, one of those guys, Topi Niemelä, one of those guys, could in training camp, could they prove that they're ready to play regular minutes in the NHL? Or do the Leafs already feel that, as I do, a Philip Myers probably wouldn't be a bad option as your 6th defenseman if you traded Timothy Liljegren for some more forward depth? I would kind of prefer that exchange, knowing that Liljegren comes at a $3 million cap hit for the next 2 years. I'd prefer to have Philip Myers in that spot. I kind of feel he's, obviously not a high-end NHL blue liner, but he's played a decent amount of games in the NHL. And I think as a third pairing, right shot, obviously very big, can be on your PKs, got a great shot. I think there's enough there that I would be okay with, whether it's him, whether it's Cade Weber. Obviously, Philip Myers may be more appeal because of the right shot. I just think that that's where there could be an opportunity to not only move or reallocate some of your cap space, but really not suffer too much or thin out your blue line that much, but then you upgrade your forward depth. So that's a move I would like to see. The other thing, just like if you do tune in to some of the live chats I have on my TikTok channel on Leafs Talk, there's been a lot of discussion on the goaltending tandem. So I'll kind of go into that a little bit here. It's probably not as much from Leaf fans, but there definitely are a lot of Leaf fans who are not very optimistic on what this new goaltending tandem can offer, that being Woll and Stolarz. But I mean, if you look statistically, I think it's very difficult to not be at least mildly optimistic on the goaltending situation heading into the new year. Like, we're talking about over the last 2 years, and we can go back further if you'd like, but, you know, whether it was Jack Campbell and, Frederick Anderson and Samsonov and Matt Murray, and then Samsonov and Woll. And, the goaltending hasn't really inspired any Leaf fan. It's always been a little bit of a disaster, whether it was someone who's injury prone or like Freddie Anderson not being able to elevate his game in the playoffs. And pretty much every playoff series, we've had the second best goaltending. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that by the end of that playoff series, other than maybe against Tampa Bay 2 years ago, you can maybe give Samsonov that edge. But at the same time, we won it was 3 of our 4 wins were in overtime. Definitely give credit to Samsonov, but I'm not sure he outplayed Vasilevsky. Could give it a tie. But yeah, beyond that series, there's not a shadow of a doubt that we had the second best goaltending each of those playoff series. Columbus, it was Korpisalo, right? Then Canadians, Carey Price. Even going back further with the Bruins, Tuukka Rask. And then most recently with the Bruins, Jeremy Swayman. Florida, Bobrovsky. Tampa Bay, when they beat us, Vasilevsky over Campbell. So we've always had the second best goaltending. And not to say that's the only reason we've had these embarrassing early playoff exits, but it certainly is a huge factor. Like, I find too many Leaf fans keep focusing on the fact that we're not putting enough pucks in the net, which, sure, you can go down that path if you want to run with that narrative that the Leafs haven't found playoff success because they can't score goals. I'm not sure I don't think that's the first place I would start. Like, yeah, if you look at games where we lost 2-1, sure, easy to say, well, yeah, we don't score enough goals. And I think that's fair. I mean, I think there's some validity to that. But if you ask me going into this coming season, what would I have wanted them to prioritize as far as off-season changes? It would 100% be the blue line and goaltending. Those would be my 1-2, and then the offense, forwards. And even if we were going to, like we were talking about, adding some forward depth, I'd almost prefer to have someone who, maybe could chip in offensively, but maybe more defensively aware, better on the PK, a more physical guy. You look at how many goals we scored during the regular season, and I get it, regular season, we were second in goals for. So do all of a sudden, I mean, it does feel like, obviously, with the way playoff games are played, guys like Mitch Marner, Calle Yarncroke, aren't obviously able to impact or tilt the ice the same way they do in the regular season. And I include Matthews, Nylander in that as well. But I'd like to see what happens if our goalie, if our blue line, if our PK can help keep some of those pucks out of the net, what that might do to our overall game and our ability to maybe score that second goal and win that game 2-1. Like, game 7, like, I get it. We only scored 1 goal, but that 1 goal with the right goaltending would have been enough to beat the Bruins. And pretty much when you're playing the Boston Bruins in a playoff series, you shouldn't be expecting to need 5 goals to beat them. Boston Bruins, whether they're winning or losing a playoff game, they're usually happy to have that result be 2-1, or that's usually what you're going to get from a Boston Bruin playoff game. I know there are a couple higher scoring ones with Florida in the second round, but that playoff series was how I think most people expected it to go. very low scoring. Goaltending would be key. And Jeremy Swayman was way better than Samsonov. When Wall finally got in game 5 and game 6, we saw what happened when the goaltending edge shifted, right? Like, it was clear that all of a sudden, the Leafs blue line wasn't that much of a problem. And if you at least held Boston to either no goals or 1 goal, you would give time for someone like a William Nylander, like he did in game 6, to find the back of the net. Or when we had decent goaltending in game 2, Samsonov was pretty solid in game 2, Austin Matthews would find a way to score a goal, and that was a game-winning goal. And then in game 7, Samsonov was playing very good up until that third period tying goal. But what happened with 8 minutes left? Our top guys, Matthews and Nylander, combined for the go-ahead goal with 8 minutes left. So, I mean, yeah, should these guys be producing more? Of course. But did Brad Marchand, did Pasta, did these guys light the lamp every game in that series? Of course not. They relied on Swayman to be the best goalie on the ice and them to not concede on the PK. So, yeah, if you talk about not scoring enough, I would probably say the power play needed to chip in. Needed at least 1 or 2 more power play goals at some point in that series for sure. But when we needed goals, it came in game 2 for Matthews. It came in game 6 from Nylander. And it came in game 7 from Nylander. So, like, we weren't that far off in terms of being able to score those clutch goals. And obviously it had to come from our top guys from the core because we have no forward depth. So that's why I'm saying I think forward depth is key, because you can't go into another postseason waiting on Yarncroke and Kampf and Holmberg to score a clutch goal for you. That ain't happening. But that's where I think defense, goaltending was the right thing to attack in the offseason for Treliving. So I'm glad with how that turned out. Now, I think it's okay to be greedy and say, well, but now we need to address the forward group. So that's where I'm at. I think that is what remains. Obviously, that's the open area of concern for me. But I think, with what they did with the blue line, the upgrades there, because you're looking at Tanev and Oliver Ekman-Larsson over Brody. And I mean, I guess if we talk about end of year additions, Edmondson and Lyubushkin, like those 2 guys over even those 3 guys, Edmondson, Lyubushkin, and Brody, I'm taking Tanev and OEL all day, every day, right? And then there was still obviously at least the hopeful signing of Hakanpää, which, as we know right now, is up in the air. But if he is available, those 3 acquisitions over the 3 departures, huge upgrade. Huge upgrade, no question. You have Chris Tanev on the ice for 22 minutes a night as opposed to TJ Brody. Are you telling me that's not an extra 5 or 6 points right there? Bare minimum. Bare minimum. And behind them, you've got Woll and Stolarz. You don't think that's an extra 5 or 6 points on what you got from Samsonov? Quite often, especially early in the year. Like, to me, I feel this Maple Leaf team could easily be 110 to 116 points in terms of where they're going to finish. I feel it's easily a top 3 team in the Atlantic, probably more likely a top 2. And if they find a way to upgrade the forward group, and again, not to sound like a broken record, but that to me, if they can find a way to upgrade, give me a top 9 forward who plays a 2-way game, can maybe chip in offensively, but more importantly, plays a physical game, can help you out in your PK. I think we're looking pretty good. And then if you get a Cowan or a Minton being able to break into the lineup and not obviously be guns a-blazing and kind of absolutely be a dominant player in year 1. I guess with Minton, he had a cup of coffee last year, but essentially it will be his rookie year, right? These guys don't even have to be absolute disruptors and like needle movers, but you add a top 9 forward plus a Cowan in there, or whoever else maybe outplays him, whether it's an Alex Nylander, a Jacob Quillen. I don't think Alex Steves necessarily that guy, but someone from in the internal options. I think we're looking really good, guys. I really do. I mean, I might just be drinking the Leaf Kool-Aid. I don't know. But I just don't think the team is that far off. And obviously, I might be asking for a lot by saying, yeah, we're just a top 9 forward away who maybe could tilt the ice and be a stud on the PK and be a physical menace. Like, sure, I get it. That's not sitting out there in UFA at the moment. But, I think this is where Treliving has to earn the money, right? Like, this is where, we like the offseason additions. I like the Stolars. I like Tanev, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. All good there. I like the depth that he added on the blue line. I think there's more competition also at forward. So all those things are nice to have, right? But to me, right now, the icing on the cake for this to be like a great off season is get that top 9 forward. Get a top 9 forward. If it's a third center, good two-way guy, that would be unreal. And I kind of believe that Treliving is close to doing that. Like, I'd be shocked if Treliving is looking at the lineup right now, projected lineup into training camp, and saying, yeah, I feel good about it. I can't buy it. I can't buy it. And maybe he was like I was. Maybe he was more confident that they could get a Mitch Marner trade done. And that would be where maybe, as part of the trade for Mitch Marner, you bring in 1 or 2 forwards, and then you feel your overall forward group or your depth is good enough or improved. But now if he's thinking, well, yeah, Mitch Marner's telling me he's not going to waive. His agent said there's no chance, right? I have to think he'd be like, okay, if I can't move Mitch Marner, I've got to do something else. And that something else has to be adding more support for the big boys. Like, what you're going to get generally from Matthews, Marner, Nylander, JT. I mean, you would hope he kind of can bounce back a little bit production-wise, but I don't think he's going to be like a complete non-impact player. I don't think he's at that level where we have to worry about him just not contributing anything. So you generally know what you can get from those 4. Nyes, Domi, McMahon, I'm good with. Would you want Nyes and Domi generally on your first line if you were a Stanley Cup contender? No. Would you want Bobby McMahon on your second line if you're a Stanley Cup contender? Hell no. But if you add a top 9 forward, or it's Easton Cowan and a 3C that, has had a lot of impact on previous teams and could actually be somewhat of a difference maker, whether it's on the PK or whatever, 5-on-5, just even adding like 2 guys, Cowan and 1 more, I feel that's a pretty good group. And then it makes you okay with like Nyes, McMahon, Domi playing where they are. Because not that many teams have a top 3 of Matthews, Marner, Nylander, or even a top 4 adding in JT. So, yeah, some teams would love to have our top 4. There are teams where we'd love to have their top 9, but I think that's kind of part of the balancing act. And unfortunately, Treliving picked up this group on the fly here, where it's like most of the decisions were already done, that, or we haven't really acquired or signed or drafted good young defensemen that are now solid contributors for our team. So we've got to fill in the gaps with, maybe overpaying guys like Tanev and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So it's kind of been a little bit patchwork for Treliving up until now. But I still think there is a relatively easy path. And maybe just for me, it looks easy. But if you're an actual GM and not just an armchair one, maybe it is more difficult than I'm making it seem. But Like Treliving's got what? It's about 1.2, 1.3 left of cap space, but that also kind of, allows you more flexibility if you are able to make a yarn croaker camp move. So I don't think it's crazy to foresee another move coming where our top 9 forward group gets maybe not a significant upgrade, but an upgrade. And then I'll be feeling a lot better about things. All right. Well, on that note, I will shut her down. I appreciate everyone who did join and watch the recording here. If you have any comments or any questions, anything you liked, anything you didn't like, always love to hear from you. So please drop me a note. And you can obviously find these shows on YouTube or on Facebook through the Sports Fluent channel. You can definitely type that in your search and you'll find Leafs Unfiltered. And then, of course, I got to do my shameless plug. Leafs Talk on TikTok. Come and follow. We do live chats pretty much almost every night now as things are kind of getting closer to training camp. A lot of excitement there. So always encourage people to jump on the live with me on those TikTok lives. So if you're interested, you can do that as well. So yeah, we will be back next Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern here. So you can find us there. But until next time, thank you very much for the support and enjoy your night.